Hi, today we're going to talk about forms, and forms are used everywhere. Sometimes you may not even necessarily know that you're using a form. An example is I'm going to log on to my student email or my Maricopa email. I've got an input box, it's a text box, same here, and then I've got a button. And I'm actually using a form that gets sent to a database that will send me to my email. I'm not going to wait for that because it's been kind of slow today, so another example, which is the one that we typically think about when we're dealing with forms, is something like Amazon. I've got a text box right here. I also got a selection box so I can modify my search. I can go to books, and let's say I want to look at HTML and CSS. And so all I have to do is hit search, and what it does is it takes you to a web page that's dynamically generated. Hey, there's our book. So let's click on that. Utilizing, once again, another form, only it's just a link. Same here. I want to add this to my cart. I can click right here. That's a button. And notice it says add to cart. This is something that they like to do because most people get a little freaked out when they see the word buy. But then again, Amazon makes it so easy to buy. They want you to just click it right there and it will automatically buy it now. So they don't really truly want you to think about it. But once again, a selection box. Oh, and this is another one, a radial button. So these are just examples of different forms. Now, before I forget, you should really take a look at this video about data mining. It's kind of fascinating. And then this is the silly one that talks about what happens when you have a bad design. And then I also want you to try using my retirement bribe site. Of course, it's a joke. Please understand that. One of the things that I would highly recommend you do is we can right click here and go view page source, and you can see the code that is used to make it. So if you want to be bribing me for $2 million for two A's, two B's, and one C, all I have to do is hit bribe me now, and then it takes me there, and once again it's another form. But it's also utilizing that information that was sent. Notice two at $1 million, 2 million, two at 100,000, and then two at 10,000. And this is something that we connect up and we utilize quite a bit at Mal's e-commerce. We'll be using it in CIS 233, which is Web Design 2. But Mal's is really nice. And if you want to try linking to that, you can click over here down at the bottom and it'll tell you some information. And the nice thing about setting up an account with Mal's e-commerce is that it is free. And we always like that magic word, free. Also, I would recommend that you review all these W3 web schools, W3 schools site. But what we want to do now is we want to go into our favorite program, which is brackets. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up our favorite page to open up. Oh, come on, desktop. There's website. And there is template. Well, what I'm going to do is inside the body section, I am going to start a form. And then just like everything else, we start a form, we want to end it. So I'm going to give myself some space there by hitting return a few times. Now, form has a couple attributes that you definitely need to use, and one of them is action. And action is essentially saying, this is what's going to happen when I click on the submit button. Well, typically what you do is you take it to a PHP page, a Perl script, or this is sending it out in an email. So I'm going to go mail to colon, and then this is not my real email, so just so you know, john@john.com. I should see if that's available, john.com. I doubt it, but you never know. So I've got that action set up. This is essential to have it. Now the next thing I want to do is I want to have the method, and this is how this information is going to be sent. Well, I want to use the post method because what's going to happen is this is going to have some information that I don't want the whole world to see. I will show you an example of the get method. Once again, when we go back to oops, can't spell. But fortunately, Amazon knows that I can't spell. I'm going to put HTML again, and I'm just going to hit, that's a submit button or send. Well, what happens with the get method is it puts that up at the URL. So notice all this information. It's saying, hey, I'm looking for the keyword HTML. So I'm literally taking a database and searching it right now. But I'm using the post, which means I want this information encapsulated into the package sent up. I don't want it to be part of that URL. And the reason you don't want it to be part of the URL when you're sending sensitive information is that anybody can grab it. I literally saw one time my credit card number go away across the internet up on the URL. And if anybody had what we call a packet sniffer, they could have seen that immediately and stolen all my good information. So now what we're going to do is we are going to create what we call an input type. So we're going to do that caret, and I'm going to go input, and the type, I'm going to go text, thank you. Now that's telling what kind of input box to put in. Now what I want to do next is give it a name. So if you think about a database, what we're doing is we're literally filling out information in a database, and the name is short for field name. So I'm going to call this fname, and then I can add some additional information later, but right now I'm not going to worry about it too much. So that's my input type. I'm also going to have it repeated, so that's for first name, and this is going to be for last name, so I want to change the name from fname to lname. Now one of the things you got to be really careful about is to make sure that you change the name for these objects. Otherwise what will happen is the last piece of information that was utilized, like an lname, will win, and all the other information will just go bye-bye. So that's why you want to make sure that these are unique, and they're very important. We can add other attributes like size and stuff like that, but we're not going to worry about it too much, at least right now. So now I'm going to go File, I got to give it a name, Save As, because I don't want it to override my template, so I'm going to form.html, and I'm saving it in my website. Now also remember that this stuff doesn't update on the website until I FTP it up. I'm sure probably by now that you figured that out, but it never hurts to remind you. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check to see what it looks like. Now I've made a crucial error here. I've got these two text areas that I can add information in it, but the information's been set up for us databases, but not for us mere mortals. And what I mean by that is I've got two areas that I could add information in, but I as a user would have no clue what that's all about. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give it some information. Now I could use a label tag and then reference it right there, but I'm kind of one of those lazy ones that doesn't like to use that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a P right there, and I'm going to end my P not there but after that, at the very end there. And then I'm also going to put a BR just to kind of space it out a little bit right there. But I'm going to put first name, last name. And so what we're doing is we're just polishing it up a little bit so that the people that are utilizing it will be able to know what to do. Now, one of the things that I'm going to do eventually is I'm going to put some spacing in here by adding a margin, or maybe some, well, no, I'm definitely going to do a margin, but maybe make it a little bit bigger by adding some padding inside the cell too. So that's kind of nice. So now then I'm going to start another P, and I'm going to put in, oops, password. Now, just because I say it's a password doesn't necessarily mean that that's what it is. So I'm going to create a caret. I'm going to go input, going to put a type, and I'm going to put password. And then the name is going to be equal to PSWD, which is my notation for password. Now, this is one of those things that you want to make sure that you limit the number of characters you can put in, because you don't want them to, flood the system. But you also want to make sure that you have a long enough area for it to work. Now, one of my favorite things that just drives me crazy is Ticketmaster is notorious for cutting off the user ID, and they want you to use your email as a user ID. Well, my user ID for school used to be really long. They've actually kind of shortened it just recently. But I would never have enough room for me to put in my password using my school email address, which is kind of a shame. Now, just because I'm making a password, I'm going to hit save right here. I'm going to jump back over here, and I'm going to hit reload. Now, notice what's cool about this is you can't see the characters. Now, you might think it's encrypted, but it is not. It's just hidden. This is keeping people from looking over your shoulder while you type. Now, if they're watching you type on the keyboard and they got really good eyes, they could just figure it out the same way, or same way with a camera. So it's not the most perfect thing to do. The bottom line is, if you're ever going to use user ID and password, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense to do it in a place where there's a lot of people hanging out, or where there's a lot of cameras, which in our society nowadays is, well, it's pretty pervasive actually. So it's really kind of hard to find that. Well, there we go. We've got our password out. Now, the next thing I want to do is I'm going to do select. So I'm doing a selection box. And then just like before, I got to give it a name. And I'm going to say, oh, what do I want this selection box to be? Oh, let's put job. And what we do with a selection box is we put in some options. Now the thing we have to do though is we have to put in a value. And I'm going to set it equal to T. So what this is the information that gets passed along to the database. This is so that we can see it. So it needs to kind of match the same information, but it doesn't have to be exact. So I'm going to put faculty. And I get real lazy when I do this because I just hate typing. I'm mildly dyslexic, so it just kind of is a pain. But once again, you got to kind of pay attention to what you're doing. So we're going to put staff. Notice I put it lowercase. I probably want to come back here and put that one lowercase also. But it doesn't really matter in here what case it is. This is just for us to see it. So I'm going to do staff. I'm going to paste it again. And going to put student. Make sure I change the value. Student. And I'm going to be lazy and put admin, but I'm going to spell it out here. So I'm going to, oops, not spell, administration. So I made some changes. I'm going to do Control S to save. Oops. I'm also going to get rid of some of that space. So Control S, come back over here, hit reload. And I've got faculty, staff. Now notice by default it selects the first one. So what you probably want to do is, if you're going to do this in a real world situation, is leave this blank. And put in please select one option. Now I actually did that, made it really long for a reason, and then I'm just going to put select later on. But watch what happens to the box. It expands out so it takes in the full area. Actually, that's not too bad. I kind of like that. Now obviously I have a little bit of a problem. So first of all, I'm going to put a P right here. I'm going to cut it, bring it down here to end it, and put in please, oops, select your role on campus. Now, us mere mortals know what it means to select something here. And once again, you kind of got to pay attention to the spacing. Like I probably would want to put a margin around all of these, just so it gives me a little bit more room to play with. Now, if you want to skew the values instead of using this, let me get rid of that too, by the way. Let's say that I wanted to this is the way you can do it in you can put selected. Now this will then by default, when I come back here, if I didn't put this selected, it would go please select by default. But now I've skewed it by putting faculty. That's just one of those cool attributes that you can add. Now that's one way to doing it. I like to do the long way because I just have this nasty feeling that they're gonna make us do this in the future. So do selected equals selected. And just so you know, it doesn't change anything, even though I saved it. So I'm going to get rid of this and have it go back to the default, but that's just kind of one of the nice ways of doing it. Now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to force people to make a selection of some sort. So I'm going to put in my paragraph, hit return a few times, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to do an input, if I spell it right, type, and it's a radio button. And once again, we're going to put name equals transport. Now, I've made a very crucial mistake here. I've got the radio button, what time. This is going to be the radio button group, but I haven't given it a value, so I better give it a value before I forget. Oops. And I'm going to set it equal to car. And the next one I'm going to put in is bus. And walk. And so drive a car, bus, walk. I'd put transporter in, that'd be kind of cool, but that's not true just yet. So what I'm going to put in for this one is ride. And what that will be is get a ride. Now obviously I've got a little bit of a problem, just like I did before, is if I was to save this and then look at it, it would be a bunch of, well, let's take a look at it. It's just kind of cool to see it anyway. I've got buttons, and notice that it forces me to only select one of them, but we don't know what those buttons mean, so I'm going to come back here and go car, bus, walk, and get a ride. And it can be a get a ride from anybody, really. Now I still got a little bit of a problem, and I'm going to show you how I'm going to resolve that in just a second. But look here, I now hit reload. If I'm clicking on this one, is it for bus or for walk? Well, then I have to sit and think about it for a second. Plus, I am mildly dyslexic, and you don't want to give me something like this when it's too easy for me to make the wrong selection. So what we're going to do is we are going to put an ampersand NBSP semicolon, and I'm going to copy that again. And that's just a non-breaking space. And then I'm going to use this pipe, and this is the key that's right above the enter key. So I'm going to hold down the shift key and put in my pipe, and then I am going to copy this again. And this will make it so much easier. And the number one thing you want to realize is when you're developing a form, you want to make it as easy as possible for them to fill it out, because if you don't, you're going to lose a lot of information. It drives me crazy when I go online to fill out a form for whatever reason, and they want me to fill it out, and then they make it so hard to figure out what the information really is. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to paste that in a couple times. The other thing that you really need to do is you need to design your forms very well, make it easy to read, and if you're going to ask for people's information, don't ask for too much. Most people will just finally get tired. I'm one of them, and just say, "Oh, phooey on that." Now with that little pipe, it's really easy to know that that's for bus, that's for walk, and that's to get a ride. So you've just made it a whole lot easier. But we still have a problem, and what that is I still don't know what car, bus, walk, and get a ride means. Get a ride kind of giving me a hint, but we really have to not make people sit and think about it. So you put, how did you get to campus today? Question mark. And then I'm going to put in a little BR so it just drops in right after that. And now car, bus. Now something that I need to point out is how these get grouped together is by the name. I'd mentioned that earlier. Well, now watch what I'm going to do. I'm going to make a typo. And this is part of the reason I always copy things. Oh, you know what? I'm going to have two T's. So I'm going to typo that by putting an extra T. Watch what happens. I hit reload. I can add car. I can go bus. I can walk. Ooh, now I've got two selections because this radio button is part of a different group because its name is transport T. So in order to get rid of that, I save it and then I go for it, and now it will go back to working properly. But always double check because sometimes you make a typo when you fix things too. Good. And let's put in how. Oop, you know what? Let's gotta have my P. Sorry. And how did you pay for this class? Question mark. Well, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a different type of input type. I'm going to set it equal to. Oop, can't spell. Well, that's interesting. And let's go. How did it? Oh, let's put pay. This got me a little worried. I wonder why it didn't show up. Now I just made a mistake. Oops, didn't put in a value. There we go. Savings. I'm going to save it and hit reload because this has got me a little worried. No, I must have done something wrong. I'm doing something silly and I don't have a clue what I'm doing wrong, and I don't really want to start over. So what I'm going to do, checkbox. Now what I was going to do, let's try that again. There we go. I knew I was doing something silly, but I was getting real worried because it didn't pop up and give me a clue, and I just misspelled checkbox. Oops, sorry about that. I keep hitting one of my playback buttons. So what I'm going to do next is, obviously, just like before, I got to put in savings. I'm going to paste it instead of savings. I'm going to put it all in one word, credit card, because and paste it again. Loan. Oops, not load. Grant. parents, and I may not necessarily be getting all the options, but I just wanted to have some. Now I know you're thinking, hey, he did not put in information for us mere mortals, and you are absolutely correct. I will do that in 1 second. I'm just going to do the real quick and dirty grunt work, which is just copying this information, paste, paste. There we go. And then the input type that I'm going to put here is credit card. Grant. Parents. Job. Now let's hit save and see how it looks right now. Oops, I missed one right in there. I'll get that one fixed up in just a second. The nice thing about checkboxes, I like to say you can be greedy. You can have multiple selections. So let's get back here, clean that up just one more. Right there. And remember, you can spread this out to make it a little bit easier to see. The one thing you don't want to do is have a bunch of jumbled up code and then have a mistake, and then trying to go through and find it is just a royal pain. That's also why I would clean this up a little bit there. Now let's test and see how it looks. Hit reload. Yeah, I like that. I might actually want to put a BR around that too. Good. Now I'm going to have to add a couple more buttons, and then I will start to make it pretty. And that's the key here is I'm going to show you how to put these forms together, but then you're going to have to figure out a way to make it pretty, i.e. using your CSS and using CSS and possibly using tables too, because to be honest with you, I like using tables much more than I do CSS. So I'm going to do an input type. It's going to be submit. And shame on you for not putting in the double quotes. Thank you. And I'm going to put in a value equals add to cart. Typo slash caret. So that's a submit button. So now I have a way of sending it. And then instead of submit, I'm going to put in reset. And I'm going to put clear form. There we go. We got the ability to add to cart and clear to form. Now I just noticed a couple things that are missing. I got a password in there. That's kind of cool. I didn't have a section for email, and emails are kind of cool. Didn't used to be this way. It used to be just a standard little box, but we're going to go input type. Oop. There we go. And then name equals my email. I could have just put email too. It doesn't really matter. Now I'm going to use an attribute required. Now I personally like going required equal required, but just, well, let's do it. But you could get away with just required. There we go. Uh-oh, she locked up. Did I save it? Control S. Let's just go back and relaunch it there. Ah, there we go. Now notice that I made it required. It's saying, hey, fill it out. So I'm just going to put garbage in here. And notice it's going to ask me for an @ symbol. So it's just a way of double checking that they at least got good format for an email. You're going to need an @ symbol, you're going to need a character before the @ symbol and a character after the @ symbol, and then a period for the character after the @ symbol, at least one character, and then a period, and then a .com, a .edu, or .whatever nowadays. There we go, at john.com. There, it's going to be happy. And it's going to submit it. Now what I'm going to do next is we're going to add some prettiness to by using field set. It'll help us play around with the layout a little bit. Now what we're going to do next is we're going to pretty this up. I want to make sure that it's easier to distinguish what types of information are available on this web page. So what we're going to do is we're going to come back to brackets, and I am going to create what we call a field set. There we go. And I'm going to end that field set. And then after email, that's where I'm going to end it. And then I'm going to start another field set, but I'm going to be lazy and take that and just delete that part. And then I'm going to end that field set right before we get our input buttons. There we go. And then the next thing we're going to do after we start a field set, what we want to do is we're going to have a little section called a legend. So essentially it's a way of naming the field set for you. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to call it background information. There we go. And then I'm going to be lazy once again, and I'm just going to copy that because I just don't want to type in legend. Yeah, that is pretty lazy. And there's my next field set. That's where I'm going to put that in, and demographic information. And I'm going to save it, and let's see what it looks like. So I've saved it. I'm going to launch this over here for live view. Look how it just kind of spaces it out. Now the next thing I want to do is let's pretty this up a little bit, and that's where we're going to get into the CSS. And I am going to come up here, and first of all I'm going to input curly brackets, and I'm going to put margin, and I am going to do 0, no, 5px, well, let's just do 5px and see how that looks. Save it, come back here, reload. There, we got a little bit better spacing on that. So now the next thing we're going to do is we're going to pretty up the field set. Now, first of all, I want to do legend. There we go. Do my curly brackets. And I'm going to put a padding, and I'm going to do 10px. So it's going to space it out a little bit better. Oops, sorry. I was trying to save it and I hit the wrong key. Well, it gave me a little bit more room because I really don't like information right up against there. Now let's go A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Okay. Fields. And I misspelled it. Sure don't want to click on. Let me double check over here. Oh, I was right the first time. I before E except after C. Do my curly brackets. Now I'm going to do a margin auto. And put in my semicolon. I'm also going to put in a padding of 10px so to get some spacing around that. And then I'm going to put in a width. And I'm going to go 60%. And then just for grins, what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a background color, and I'm going to make it tan. See how that looks. So there we go. Make sure I got that correct. See what it looks like now. Come back and reload it. There we go. Now it looks a little bit like garbage right here, so I'm going to put in a little bit more. There we go. Copy that. Come down here, add it to my legend. And then just for grins, I'm going to put a border, and I'm going to make it 2px in size. It's going to be solid, and I'm going to make it red, semicolon. Copy that, put that there, save it. There we go. Now I got one little problem. I want to space that out just a little bit, and then I also probably want to center that. Now there's a couple different ways I'm going to do that. I'm going to do the lazy method. Oh, where's my field set ending? Up, there we go. Just put in a P. And then to make sure that it works, you put in an ampersand NBSP semicolon. And then that way it spaces it out for you. And I could have done it with CSS, but I just didn't want to have to sit and think about it. There we go. And then I probably want to do the same thing down here to make it look sweeter. And what happened? There we go. That was weird. It hiccuped on me. So first of all, I'm going to put a P right here. And I'm going to end my P right there. And I'm going to put a class. And I'm going to make it center me. And I'm going to put in center me. And I'm making a mistake right away, so hopefully you'll see the mistake that I'm making. I'm not sure this is going to work. I think it does. There's some occasions where it doesn't. I'm going to text align center. Now the mistake I made is I created a class, but I didn't call it a class. I have to put that period in front of it in order for it to really be a class. So we'll hit that, hit save. Did I save it? Yes, I did. Oh, didn't put it in. No, yeah, I did. Nope, afraid it wouldn't work. Well, what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to have to do it the hard way. Thought I could be tricky. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a width, colon, 200 px, and margin, auto. Oops, didn't mean to do that. Then hit Control S and I hit Control D, which just duplicates the last set of coding. And why is that not working? That should have worked. Huh. Maybe it did work before and I just didn't know it because I just noticed that this is... No, that should have worked. So it's margin auto. It's on a P. Oh, and I would have caught this later. It's outside that field set. Oh, so I would have had a validation error and I would have caught this after the fact. But what's happening is the reason this is not working is this is improper nesting. This is a really cool mistake to make. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get the proper nesting so I can start that P right before here and that P right there. Oh, that's perfect. By having it inside, it was improperly nested, and that's one of the reasons it would not display and would not work. Oh, that is awesome. Well, since I used the center me, what I'm going to do is I'm going to also put in some margins up top. So I'm going to put 10 px, oops, px space. There we go. And I could add a little bit more if I wanted to. That's just so you can see it really well. So now I've got my background information, I got my demographic information that I can fill out. It's nicely spaced, and add to cart, or I can clear the form. So this has been kind of a long little lecture, but I just wanted to make sure that you knew the ins and outs of forms. And what I'm going to want you to do for your assignment is obviously you want to have some, shipping information if you wanted to do a shipping form. You would also want to be able to sell something like selling a product. And if you look at what I did with, um, you know, getting the fake diploma, you could do that and then just add pictures of the product and it looks really kind of cool. So that's the assignment. You need to create a form. Make sure you link it to your homework page. Thank you.